Hello, Bill Wadman.
Hello, Sandy. How are you?
I'm a bit snotty and a bit
Yeah,
throaty.
I could tell from here.
If
Just
I
don't blow your
sneeze,
nose.
if I sneeze, watch out.
Yeah. Whoa.
Hmm. Anyway, the
Uh,
goal. What is the goal of life, Bill?
the goal of life to survive. It's like that old saying, I'm trying to live forever. So far, so good.
Hmm.
Uh, I think the goal of life is different for every person,
But
or rather, there's different goals.
hmm. So I mean, there are kind of goals that are forward, and that's I think that's the main perception of what a goal
Sure.
is. But I
Yeah.
have been thinking a lot about goals that we set for once we're gone, like legacy.
Okay.
And I've been thinking a lot about whether, you know, only the very grandest of humans have a legacy, or if we
They,
all
us- they
have
usually
legacy.
buy a legacy.
No, I want us to look at it seriously. That, what are we leaving behind? And also, what have others left for us? And what imprints of importance upon us from what others not just teach us whilst they are vital and alive, but what do we learn through what they leave? Yes, their legacy.
Now, do you imagine this as like people we know personally, or people in the world?
Well, people in the world generally, which
Okay.
includes people we know.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Hmm. Anyway, I've been looking at Sisyphus, and there's a very famous Titian painting, Tiziano, anglicized to Titian, Sisyphus, painted in 1548,
Yeah.
1549, pushing his boulder up the hill.
And then watching it roll back down.
Yeah, so you know the tale of Sisyphus. Um,
Yes.
I mean, he was meant to be a wicked, wicked man, wasn't he? He was full of deceit and cunning. So
Yeah,
much
and
so
he
that
got
he
what's coming to
tricked,
him.
he did, but he tricked death twice. I mean, he had all kinds of wickedness up his sleeve. He was a pioneering king who was all for navigation and commerce and so on. But at the same time, the thing that pissed the gods off is that he violated rules of um, rules of the house by killing his guests. He violated their sense of welcome.
It's like the Red Wedding.
Yes. And anyway, his fate was, if people don't know, eventually just in the underworld in Hades was to push the boulder up the hill, and then when it got to the top, every single time for the rest of eternity, it would roll back down. Um, Now, in terms of like having a goal, I don't aim in my life to repeat ad nauseum my mistakes or even my actions, but I know I do. And this might seem like a very loose link, but it does somehow join up that there's a sense of legacy in this fable, in this story, that Sisyphus teaches us something. And I
That
wonder if you know what it is.
uh, don't piss off the gods. I mean, I had a conversation with a younger person recently, and
A younger person,
yeah, a person who was younger.
did you eat them afterwards?
No, 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 no. But they were having some relationship trouble, and I said, be very aware at what's going on and the way you feel about it and the way you handle this, because you're imprinting in your mind how it is that you do this.
Hmm.
And as you get older, you're going to repeat the way that you were in this relationship and other relationships. Like
Yeah.
it's just sort of what happens. I was like, so just I'm not going to tell you what to do, but like, just think about your actions, because how you deal with things and how you feel about it is going to be how that's the path that's going to get printed. And I think that there's a lot of things like that in life
Yeah.
where it's like we, to your point, we we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and a lot of times it's just because it's what feels it's the easiest path or the most natural, but a lot of times it's could be a really bad path. It's just that it's the well worn, you know.
I mean, do we leave legacy for ourselves? Do our former selves create the legacy for now?
Sure, but you also, your failures in your life can inspire other people, you know. I
Mm.
mean, these fables are meant to be lessons learned through the stories about others, right? That's the whole point.
Well, yeah, I mean, in this story, frankly, you should not trick the gods ever.
Yeah.
That's stupid. They're gods.
However, however, if you take gods out of it
Mm.
and don't think that there is any sort of, you know, retributive power that was bigger than you that's going to come up upon you once you die, can you blame Sisyphus for doing everything he can to expand his own life? You know, it's not his responsibility to worry about anybody else's life to some extent. I mean, I tend to think about other people's lives, but like one could make the argument like, well, maybe they're just telling us this story about Sisyphus because they don't want people to be jerks during their lives because
But
society's
so
better without that.
do we learn more from life or do we learn more from death?
I think we learn a lot from the fear of death. But I don't know that it's one of those things where I don't think you can actually take a lot of lessons from something until it's over. Yeah. Um, it's also, what's interesting about this is he's also alone doing it, you know? It's like
Well, in this
this,
painting, he's got this scary cat.
well, yeah. And this like dragon, yeah, all this nonsense. But like, but I always imagine it's like Sisyphus, like in an empty space up and down the hill, and it just never ends, you know?
You know that Camus, I think it was Camus, or was it Sartre? One of them wrote about Sisyphus. I think it was Camus actually. And the point he made was that Sisyphus, the tale of Sisyphus, doesn't have to be as ugly or cautionary. Apart from that, we ought to change our perception. So we look at Sisyphus, he pushes it up the hill, the boulder is heavy. He gets all the way to the top and it rolls down. As we've said already, that happens for eternity and that's his punishment. But Camus posited that we could see Sisyphus in his actions and activities as kind of triumphant and that there was pleasure in his work.
He is doing it.
He's doing it regardless of whether the boulder rolls away, which we know it will, and so does he. That depending on the perception of the action, we either leave that party feeling horrified, disappointed, negative, or
Sure.
we can come away with a feeling of almost like, I guess, gratitude and
Well,
gladness.
there's an argument to be made that just getting up every morning and finding food for yourself so you can live another day is itself a Sisyphus-like existence,
Well,
you
indeed.
know?
And then again, back to this idea of legacy. Is perception of action something in legacy? So
Perception of your own action?
what I mean is that we remember the action of the boulder being pushed up the hill.
Sure.
So the legacy of Sisyphus is the cautionary tale.
Right.
But can the legacy actually be the perception? Is perception ever in legacy? Do you understand what I mean?
Your own perception of the story, you mean?
It's easy to hand down narratives about actions.
Sure. Oh, but how Sisyphus saw his own perceived his own reality?
Yes, like that legacy. Do we know it?
No.
Hmm.
Unless it's explicit, and even then, who knows who wrote it, you know?
Fine. And then I was thinking, in terms of like preserving someone's legacy,
Yeah,
we've got, and I know it's bizarre because we're talking about Sisyphus and it's a fable, blah, blah, blah. But
sure.
in any story, just let's take Sisyphus, you know, how do we preserve legacy? Now, in this case, we've got lots of paintings of Sisyphus. Fast forward 500 years, we've got lots of photographs of events and actions. But are we bringing our own perception seen through the lens of us now, or is there a legacy of perception? And even in as much as somebody might, for example, write extensively about their feelings at the moment of that event, whatever it might have been, that we then see it in our current state.
Sure. It's always removed. It's always in the third person to some extent.
So then I
Even if
wonder,
you're reading an autobiography, you're still like how you understand the words they chose and everything like that. But it seems like legacy is always done after the fact or in a controlled manner. You're never really getting the true story, right?
hmm,
You're getting someone's angle on it.
so then in terms of like having a goal in one's life,
Yeah, sure.
you know, what are we using to navigate our life choices, if not legacy? But legacy doesn't really exist in the way I think we make believe to ourselves it does.
Sure. My wife and I spend a lot of time in a cemetery near us, this big Greenwood cemetery,
Hmm.
walking around, and there's lots of important people and lots of people who, whatever. But you know what? There's maybe six graves of people in there that you would actually recognize their names without
Hmm.
doing research, despite the fact that so many of them were the richest person in New York for 40 years. And you know what I mean? This kind of crazy stuff.
Hmm.
It's at some point, everybody there is just some guy, you know? Like a few generations out, when they're out of living memory of anyone who's alive,
Hmm.
they're just another name, another headstone. I think we want to believe that there's some meaning to it all. And that's the goal, is to like believe that there's meaning. But I don't know that there is. I think we trick ourselves into thinking that there is. That legacy is actually a thing.
Yes. Hmm.
Because it's sad because it devoids life of the one thing we want it to have, so that going through all of the terrible and wonderful things you go through in life has some purpose. But you know, yeah. Okay, but here's my question on this photo.
Hmm.
If it was, as it was not from what I understand, two people who happen to kiss in front of him, if it was a true moment of two people kissing versus two actors he hired to walk by and kiss, does that change your perception of this picture? Because millions upon millions of people have had this photograph on the wall and saying, oh, the wonderfulness of romance in Paris and all this stuff. And it's a lie.
I know, but Bill, all images are lies
Yes.
because they're images. Now, as it happens, people may know, and I'm sure we've actually talked about this before. Um, these young people were in fact real life lovers, but the kiss was not a spontaneous kiss. They had actually already kissed.
Yes.
Doisneau was very, very reserved. He was very passive. And by all accounts, he approached them and he'd seen them kissing already but he hadn't been bold enough to take the picture, but he plucked up the courage to say that he found them charming and would they mind. And as it happens, there's a bit of Phil's story in a minute that I want to go to in context of legacy, actually. But um, the young woman who died only earlier this year, actually, aged 94,
Good
um,
life.
yeah, said, sure, they were both actors. He didn't hire them. He hadn't premeditated this as such.
Yeah, but it's still constructed.
I know, but Bill, an image is constructed. Now, about
Not
legacy,
every image is constructed.
about, oh, hang on a second. Every thought is constructed.
Of course. Okay. But if he was just sitting there and literally sitting there drinking a coffee with his camera, these people stopped and he went snap, that wouldn't be different than what happened?
No, I think, maybe I'm a bit of a floozy with my references, but I don't
Oh,
mind.
floozy.
I don't mind, as being duped because I understand and appreciate the nature of images. I know you do too, but it surprises me that you think that images could be anything other ever than essentially a load of hogwash. Sometimes very pretty hogwash, sometimes transportingly beautiful, meaningful, and profound hogwash, but
Yeah, see, the
nonetheless,
minute it becomes hogwash, none of those adjectives matter to me.
oh, lighten up,
Despite a hold on
Wadman.
a second, despite being a person who does this for a living, I understand that they're constructed. I construct them all the time,
Yes, you do.
but I feel guilty about it.
Oh, please.
I do. It's one of the reasons why I don't. It's one of the negatives of what I do.
But Bill, any image.
Yeah, I know.
So
Even by
the
the angle that you point the camera is constructed. I understand
fine,
that, but
right. So the trigger for me is not the lie. The legacy of this is not the lie of it. The legacy is the kiss because I understand the nature that perception isn't passed to me. I am in charge of that,
yeah.
right? So I understand that I meet this photograph fresh. I have my conditions and all the other stuff that all of us have, which is why legacy can't really exist in terms of it being meaningful. I breathe the life into the photograph, as
Yes,
you
but
do.
but does it matter if I mean per your stated goal, uh uh what do you think his goal was in making this photograph?
So,
Did he imagine that this was going to be one of the photographs of the 20th century?
no, I shouldn't have thought so at all.
But it is, right?
Right. But this is what I mean. If we set out to make a legacy, I'm not sure we can. In the same way that if we set out to find a legacy that is meaningful,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can.
Yeah. You can't force a perfect first date. Perfect first date's just going to happen or it's not.
You can make it the perfect image, though.
Yeah, what does perfect even mean?
What does it mean?
I don't know. Ask an AI.
Right. I'm asking you, Bill Wadman. I mean, there's all kinds of conflated
It's funny because I have
meanings.
a picture that I took years ago of my friend's daughter, and there's like a weird little up in the upper left hand corner. There's like this little chisp of light coming in through the window that is, the light hitting the wall, and it's just in the upper left hand corner of the frame. And I left it in because I like it. That it keeps it from being too perfect, you know. And whenever I show it to people, like in talks and things, I always ask, like, raise your hands. Like, who thinks that I should have removed that? And who thinks I should have left it in? And it's like 50-50. And I always find that interesting because people are like, oh, I don't like that. And then other people are like, no, 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 that makes the picture. And it's funny. So I guess my answer to you is that, what is perfect? Like, perfect often involves a flaw.
But you're not going into that deeply enough, I don't think.
Go ahead. Push me.
So, if the perfect, by
Hmm.
its very nature, has to have the grit and the oyster to make the pearl, right?
Sure. Yeah.
we've talked about this before. In fact, I think we've even used exactly the same language about this before. Um, then perfection can't be the thing that it results in.
Yeah, perfection is the direction you're going, not the result you get to, not the destination you get to. It's like the thing you're aiming for, not the thing. It's the North Star, but you know you're never going to get there because you're on Earth.
So is actually all goal not just seeking perfection? Is it perfection?
The goal?
Yeah, Doisneau was reaching for the kiss, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to take that to its logical conclusion, you end up at like the idea of like God, right? Like everyone wants that perfection, right? Um,
Is there any conversation in which we don't end up at death and God?
well, hey, you're driving, lady.
I'm
Uh,
just saying.
well, I mean, I think that like the more you push, I don't see, but I wonder like if you talk to him the night he took this picture, I wonder what, because if you talk to him towards the end of his life, he may have said, "Oh, yes, I remember when I took that picture and it was so wonderful. And I knew the moment I took it that it was going to change the world." I don't know exactly what he's ever said about this picture, but I could imagine somebody saying something like that. But I bet you if you asked him right after he took it, he'd be like, "Yeah, that might be a good one." Because you only know in hindsight, right? Man, that guy's cool. Look at his hair.
Well,
The best part is the woman's hand.
Camus, actually, just thinking about Camus, who wrote about
Sure.
Sisyphus, I've just got a quote that I've just found,
Okay.
not about this, but it's so pertinent. We create meaning to our own existence and interpretation.
Sure. But
That's it.
if that's true of everyone, then it's not really special though, right? Like that's true, but
Right.
that's true
This
of
is something
everything.
you say this to me all the time, like if that can be art and everything is art, then what's the point
Well,
of art? Well, there's still a
yeah.
point because
Well,
it
there's a point, but like there's it's if a definition doesn't bring distinction, then it's not actually defining anything. In a very like Aristotelian way. And I
mm,
understand that I'm being, you know,
an
strict
art.
about this. Yes, that's me. You know me.
Mm. Can I just mention
Sure.
that one note and this photograph, in so
Mhm.
many ways, he took this photograph to his grave because this is the photograph that some people claim might have killed him. Because in 1994, when he died, his daughter, who was his long term assistant, always said that he actually died of sadness. And the reason for that was that um, basically in French law, the individual owns the image of their own likeness,
Okay.
right? So if you take a photograph of me, I own it.
Yep.
And sometime many years ago, many years before he died, Doisneau was contacted by a couple who claimed to be the couple in the picture. And he knew that it wasn't them, but he also felt in a position of goodness, I think, that it would be kind of cruel to um
What, to take that dream away from them?
to disallow it or disabuse them of their.
Even though they might just have been looking for a payout?
Well, in the end they did look for a payout, and they took him to court and they dragged him through dirt, and they were fucking awful by all
Yeah.
accounts, and it ravaged him
Hmm.
emotionally. And in the end it meant that he did have to reveal to the world that this had been staged.
Yeah.
So he revealed his hand. Now, as I said earlier, he's a very reserved human apparently, and very humble, even though he's one of the most famous picture makers of the 20th century. And it broke his heart that people would be so mean in order to make a fast buck.
It's yeah, yes.
So the
And
legacy of this photograph for him turned out to be one of poison.
but isn't it interesting that for so many people, the the nexus of those two people kissing and their youth and the promise before them and all of the stuff you could lay on top of that moment between those two of them, right?
Yeah,
That for so many people is the goal of life,
right.
is to have one moment like this in their life. And yet it's the
So
photograph of that moment that destroyed the guy who made it.
the goal is the legacy of the photograph, no?
Yeah, but isn't it funny that I don't know, it's just I think that it's but the other thing is that despite the fact that all of those adjectives and descriptions and stuff of that moment that we're talking about,
Mm.
even that is an unattainable goal, you know?
Oh, I don't know. Have you never been snogged in front of
Oh, sure, but like but this is putting it at a level where it's like it's an unattainably high level, you know?
No, it's not. I'm sorry. I have made it my life's purpose to be kissed in front of every great municipal building in central, Europe and,
Yeah. And has any of
northern
them been as this good?
US.
You haven't gotten there yet. You're still doing it.
Well, when I come to New York, I shall find myself a handsome chap, and
All
then
right.
you can photograph me
I'll
kissing
take a
him.
picture of you in front of wherever. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I find it both beautiful and sad, this photograph. It's like it's by definition fleeting.
Where does the legacy lie? Still, I'm at it. I'm at it again. Like, where is the legacy?
Maybe it has nothing to do with him or the photograph. Maybe it has to do with those two people in that moment. You know? Like that in some ways, him experiencing this thing that the rest of their lives they maybe try their goal, these two young people, may have been to feel the way they felt for that brief half a second.
Does does photography preserve anything?
No. Well, yes, and but despite the fact that what it preserves theoretically doesn't change, our perception of that not lack of change does change over time. In the same way that, you could look at a picture of you when you're 8, and I've seen pictures of you when you were 8. You know, the way you looked at it when you were 10 versus 20 versus 30 versus 40, that photograph changes despite the fact that that photograph hasn't changed.
Right. So, I mean, I think about this a lot with Krishnamurti.
Mm-hmm.
So, Krishnamurti's teachings are, for want of a better description, preserved, and great care has been taken by the foundation
Lots
to
of
make.
video of him talking.
Yes. So the video is unedited.
Mm-hmm.
Audio files are unedited. They are sometimes transcribed, and that is painstaking work because though Krishnamurti isn't a guru and can't be held aloft, like a god, nonetheless, his word is kind of not because he
Revered.
said it, but it's sacred in that somebody said that word and it must be preserved.
Yeah,
And I've always found that so interesting, especially actually for Krishnamurti. Um, how does one find this balance between preservation and elevation or falsehood?
sure.
And
And what would have happened if he had lived 150 years ago instead of now?
but likewise,
Yeah,
the fact of this preservation means that people like me who go and visit the center and listen a lot to Krishnamurti talking and have read books that he has penned, they're unabridged, they're unedited, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Nonetheless, I meet that. So again, it's kind of like saying we were talking earlier about, we are coming at this always with our suitcases, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so regardless of the painstaking preservation, it's very difficult for humans to not put their own goal in the way of actual legacy.
But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's the mix of your goal and their legacy that creates something new. It's the dialectic, right?
Yes, but I mean that's where things become dogmatic. We mustn't put ourselves in the
But it
picture.
may be that it's impossible, is what I'm saying. Like this is some dark stuff.
Yes. We have looked at this before on Speaking of
Yep.
Seeing. But anyway, Kara Walker, celebrated American artist. I don't know if I want to say African American artist, but
Why?
that is what she's often described as.
You're saying that you shouldn't make the distinction that because that lessens her work?
No, I mean, you and I have talked about this before from a feminist perspective, haven't we?
Sure.
Where,
It's just female painter or whatever it is. Like,
a
no, she's a
women
painter.
artist,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
artists rather, yes, actually, I think it's right to,
There are some people who want that distinction and some people who don't want the distinction.
indeed. Anyway, Christ's entry into journalism, Christ enters Jerusalem.
Sure.
Oh shit happens.
Yep.
I mean, this is atemporal, is the beautiful word used on the MoMA um, text that goes with it. Atemporal cohesion or something, I think.
There's a lot going on in this.
But it's a non-linear narrative, isn't it? I mean, it's not taking us through a time frame in a segmented or
No,
ontological way.
but it's just interactions of caricatures and things,
Yes, and we kind of rise up through this pyramid, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And the scale of each of these characters. Although, I mean, scale is out often, and we're played with, we're tricked.
I mean, you've read more than I have in when it comes to intentions of artists and stuff. Um,
Well, maybe I don't know. You've probably read a lot, Bill.
no, I haven't read nearly as much as you would think. Um, but are most artists, do you find that they feel like their job is to create and to explain, but that it's not their job to invite change? You know what I'm saying? How
No,
many
I
people
often find it.
expect
I
to be
find it
making stuff that's
round the other way, actually, more
okay,
in kind of contemporary practice or ultra contemporary practice, which is art that is being made right now. I
right?
would say there's a huge emphasis on people having a cause that they explain, but that
But
they
they
don't.
expect change to happen because of it?
That no more that they have a cause and they explain the cause, but that they don't expect. It's not just they don't expect change. It's that they kind of tell you all this stuff and then they say, "But you make up your own mind."
Right. That's yeah, yeah.
and and
They
I
put the
find that,
onus on you and the responsibility on you.
well, yes, but what troubles me about that is that I wonder if that's legitimate or it has any integrity, or if that's just a kind of lip
Cop out?
service to
Sure.
what a kind of
Well,
contemporary practice demands.
I also think that it's a certain amount of it has to do with the fact that they ultimately know that a demand for change is futile, so all they can do is ask that it happens.
But also, I mean, you will know, as I do, many practicing artists who would be kind of horrified at their own bankability and as such shy away from being marketed.
Hmm.
And there
Yeah.
seems to be a relationship between marketability or being marketed by something external like an agent or,
Well, and all those
you know,
causes and goals and things that you have being used to market you in a really cynical way.
mm. I do want to talk though specifically about this drawing
Sure.
because in terms of legacy, the legacy here is, I mean, Kara Walker herself says, where have I put it? The history of Black people in this country, the US, is a history of violence. If that's the legacy of a people, what does that, what does the legacy actually mean?
Well, is the legacy in I guess my question is, um, by legacy, do they mean the past or what they are trying to leave for the future? You know,
Are we aware that we are moving forward to meet our future self?
do you think about your future self or do you think about your daughter? You know what I mean? When you think about legacy.
I tend not really to think about the future,
Okay.
which lots of people have a huge problem with, my family especially. I'm a terrible planner.
I used to worry about how I was going to be perceived after I died, or some idea of I need to make a corpus of work or have something that people look at when I'm gone and say he spent his time well, or he was worthy of the time that he got. Like some sort of weird non-religious version of that.
Why is that
Um,
meaningful to you?
because I don't know what else would have been. Everything else feels interesting. I never thought about it, but just thinking out loud, it allows somebody else to make the judgment. Because if I'm making the judgment, then what does it matter? Because I'm gone,
Well, indeed, what does it matter?
right? But then what does it matter at all? Period. Full stop. What is the goal? What is the legacy of anyone? Right? You're
Right,
gone. What do you care?
right. But what does a goal mean? Why do we have these goals that reach beyond our death?
I think that because we want to live on.
Oh, yes, I know. That's just so
No, but I mean,
boring.
sure, of course, but like I don't know that it's actually. I think it's really, like I said earlier, just like a fear of death. And this is like one way to skirt the rules.
I don't know if this should be a drum roll or an eye roll.
I guess what I'm saying is that like it is super heavy, but I think it's actually very simple.
Right.
And I wonder if, you can cut through all that and say, well, yeah, you're just terrified because you don't want to die. And then so all the things you've been talking about to bring meaning and validity to what you leave at the end of it and what you were trying to do the whole time that's an internal pursuit that is then over because you're gone,
Mm.
you know?
When Clara Walker is gone,
Yeah.
this drawing may survive, may outlive
Yep.
her, likely
Yep.
will.
But what if Carl Walker had made this and no one ever saw it and it was sitting in a drawer when she died?
Well, yeah, I really do want to focus on it. We keep moving away really from looking at it properly. I wonder if there's something in that, Bill.
This image?
Yeah, we've been able to be much more pointed with the other two images, whereas with this one we're just kind of diverting away from it. I find that interesting.
Well, okay, go ahead.
No, no, I have nothing further to say about that. I want us to be aware of it though, and if anybody's still listening to the two of us waffling on,
Well, I
to
think this is
listen to
this
us
is
going through this.
this is
You know,
both more loaded and infinitely complex. I mean, you could write a book on this image.
yes. I mean, again, I know when we talked about this picture before, I said to people, if you can, please do go and see Roxane Gay talking about it. It's on the MoMA site connected to this image.
Hmm.
She's very thorough in kind of talking. In fact, while she's talking, the drawing, it's a very large drawing, is rolled out in front of her. And yeah, very interesting critique of what's here. I find this image hard to speak to in terms of legacy because I realize my separation from it. And I realized then the horror in myself that I should feel separate from it.
Separation, what? Because you're in the UK and not in America?
In part, yes, and because I'm white, I'm very
Yeah,
privileged,
sure.
and all those things that, I may also be criticized for.
Sure. But lots of people in your country are the people who made all the money off of all these people were taken from Africa to America. So there's all that, right? Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it is, what really gets me is actually okay. Um, see the lower left-hand corner one up, and it's like a very almost like New Yorker sketch of a white guy.
yeah,
Okay. The style of that versus center right, like right up in the middle, there's like a cartoon black man, almost like almost caricature with the X in the eyes, like just a head on a pike kind of thing. And there's the black kid next to the head on the pike, who is actually really well drawn. It's what's interesting to me is that the level of detail and style distinctions between, they're not all in the same style. These are all very different feeling images in here. Does that make sense? Like, it's very haphazard both in in topic and in perception, but also like in style of hand,
mm,
which is it's just weird when the more you look at it, the more juxtaposed everything is, from itself.
mm.
Um,
There is something unifying, though, I find about it, which is probably because of Kara Walker's like cutout work, silhouettes.
yeah, and the color tones too, right? Really merge things together. Um,
But
so
what I
even
mean
if they're
is
in
that,
different
it's
style,
like
yeah,
imprint. I
sure.
have an imprint. A silhouette makes an imprint, or a line around an edge makes an imprint.
Yeah.
She's very cleverly done that, I think. Um, and the legacy of this, I wonder, does this drawing have a goal to inform? Yes. To remember? Yes. To teach us something? Yes. But its legacy, what is the legacy of it? Will we
Well,
do something because of this?
I mean, listen, every the most recent things in here that I can see. Well, actually, no, there's stuff like with, but like this is over such a span of time. If you made this image 50 years ago, or if you make it 50 years from now, it's going to be perceived differently. You know.
Mm. Anyway, Bill, what do you think your legacy is? You have an archive, vast archive of beautiful
I
photographs.
I think that my musings on speaking of seeing is going to be my legacy.
And on that note, campers, goodbye.
Bye, Sandy.